Coming up today on Fire Your Financial Advisor, brought to you by Golden Reserve. Estate planning attorney Tim Stallings will be our special guest to join us to talk about protecting your IRA, your savings, and your house. And what if you like your daughter, but you don't like her husband? That happens a lot. We'll talk about it today on Fire Your Financial Advisor. One of the things that's happening to people as they age in their 60s and their 70s, and they have that big house, and they decide, maybe it's time for me to downsize a little bit, but, I want to give this house to my kids as an inheritance. So what I'll do is I'll just put it in their name, and then the nursing home can't get it, right? Well, that is the question that Roger has from Columbus.
I'm Roger from Columbus. I've heard you talk about nursing homes taking your house if you can't afford the bills and don't have a trust. Rather than creating a trust, can I just give my house to my kids and after 5 years, it would be protected from a nursing home? This seems like the easiest way.
Seems like the easiest way. Greg, is Roger on track here?
Can I do a side note real quick?
Sure.
Do you mind? Do you mind if I'm going to answer that question? It's going to be a great answer, just so you know. It's gonna be a
Okay.
great answer. But here's the problem. Financial advisors are the problem. They are notorious for giving legal advice, which, by the way, is illegal. You know why Tim and I can talk about this? We're both attorneys. We're allowed to give legal advice. This is where the system breaks down, where you have Chip, the goofball, from Eddie or Merrill or Morgan or wherever, thinking that they've read an article or seen something, and they're like, oh, yeah, you should do this trust, and you should do this. If they make a recommendation, you should report them to the bar. It's illegal. You cannot provide legal advice unless you are an attorney. And the reason that we have this unique insight is because we've practiced and built one of the largest estate planning elder law firms in Ohio over the last 15 years. So we've met over 5,000 retirees. We know how this works, and we see what happens. And Tim, is the shortest, easiest route usually a good way to solve a very complicated problem?
Yeah, absolutely not. If it were that easy, I don't think we would have had a firm like this.
Yes. So here's what happens. People give their house away. Now, to Roger's question, will it work? Maybe. Maybe sometimes it works. Sometimes your car doesn't crash when you speed. So if you get it out of your name, of course, if you make it to the 5-year window, the Department of Job and Family Services, you don't have to report it to them, and it could be protected. But what they don't talk about are all the issues. Bad gifting is the number one estate planning mistake we see every week. Bad gifts screw a lot of things up, and I'll explain to you some of the highlights here. One of them is tax. The missing piece of this puzzle, in Roger's example, he may say, listen, I bought my house back in 1965. It was $50,000. That might have been early, but whatever. Bear with me here. I'm making up numbers on the fly. I bought it for $50,000, and now it's worth $250,000. And I gave it to my son. Let's call him Justin. And I gave it to Justin. He's got his life together, smart kid. And okay, great. So 5 years pass. Roger goes to the nursing home. Nursing home is an accountable asset, so they can't go after it. So he thinks, you know what? This worked. Well, Roger passes away, and Justin goes to sell the house. He's like, hey, look, great. The value of the house is worth $250,000. So when I sell it, $250,000 minus $250,000 is $0 of capital gains tax, because everybody gets a step up when, you pass away, the value of the assets increase to the value at the date of the death. Well, guess what happened? When you transfer an asset during your lifetime, your cost basis follows it. What does that mean in English? It means that $50,000 cost basis for Roger went to his son. So when he sells the house now, he's going to owe capital gains tax on $200,000. Yikes. And that's the capital gain tax reality, whether it be stocks or real estate and all these things. People don't think of the long-term issues because they're gone, right? They pass away, so they don't see it. The kids feel it after the fact. But this is one of those issues where you actually started off trying to solve one problem and you added 2 or 3 more. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, Tim, you want to talk about eligibility issues when it doesn't work, or maybe in-law issues?
Yeah, all kinds of problems. I mean, you kind of alluded to it at the beginning, but when he put that house in Justin's name, he better hope Justin doesn't have any problems, because if Justin needs care, Justin passed away prematurely, Justin gets sued, it's not really dad's house anymore, right? Sorry, Roger. It's Justin's house. So he's created those problems for himself by giving the house away. In terms of eligibility, anytime you transfer an asset, if you need help paying for the nursing home in the next 5 years, you're on the hook for it. So that's why we don't advocate giving it to your child, right? Because what if you need it back, or we need to bring the proceeds back? Now we can't do it, or we have to hope. And I don't like hope as a plan. So one of the tools, we talked about it earlier in the show, but we talk about an asset protection trust, which accomplishes Roger's goal of repositioning the asset, but it doesn't open him up to all those problems of his sons, and it avoids that capital gains tax that you just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, again, this is why estate planning and elder law have to come together. And sometimes talking to your neighbor or talking to your financial advisor when it comes to getting legal advice isn't always the best plan, because we see it all the time. A lot of times it's my financial advisor told me to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of these things can't be undone or can't be fixed. Now, this is something we can fix. So if you're freaking out right now, this can be undone. You can unwind this if you're still alive. And obviously we can move some things around and get it back to neutral, where you get all the same protection and get back to getting the benefits of a step up in cost basis when you pass away. Those things can be fixed. So don't panic. And I think, at a big macro level of retirement planning, people focus almost exclusively on investments, Tim. And this is an example of why you have to have the legal conversations. You got to have the legal piece of the puzzle, or it doesn't work. The whole kind of foundation crumbles when we just focus on investments all the time. And that's why we have people down the hallway. We have law, estate planning and elder law attorneys all over the place, because it's a required part of every retirement plan, not investment plan. A retirement plan has to have legal, has to have tax, and has to have finance, all working together if you hope to navigate retirement safely and effectively for over 20 or 30 years.
If you tried to do this on your own, you'd be chasing around town. You'd be going to your attorney. You'd be going to your tax professional. You'd be going to your investment professional. Why don't you just make one appointment and come to Golden Reserve? They're all friends. They work together. And we would love to have the opportunity to talk to you about it as well. Give us a look at Golden Reserve. GetYourRoadmap.com. Well, we're going to dive into some estate planning issues today, and we're actually going to put some questions out there today. Let's start here. This is Greg Barnes, and take it away, Greg.
Hi, my name is Greg Barnes. I live in Galena, Ohio. I was recently involved in the care of my father, and still am. But a number of years ago, I began to realize his limited finances were going to be dwindling quickly, because we were about to be putting him into an assisted living. Shortly after that process completed, I began to think about my own personal assets and how long they would last and what I could do to protect them during my wife and I's lifetime, as well as pass along something to our heirs.
All right. This is an area that we talk about an awful lot, Greg, is the people who have this on their radar are people who have parents who have gone into nursing homes or assisted living or something like that. So this is a pretty common thing. I'm worried about my dad. How do you guys help me get me through that? And then I'm kind of worried about myself too.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, until you crash a car, you really don't know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, everyone knows that nursing home situations are difficult. They're emotional. A lot of times that baggage overwhelms the financial realities. I think people are like, I don't want to see a loved one in a situation where they're in one of these facilities, or we're going to try to keep them at home. And then when it comes to the point where you realize, shoot, they're going to be in the facility and they're going to be there the rest of their life, then all of a sudden they start getting some bills and they don't understand the nuances. Because I think some people assume that Medicare is going to pay. This is going to essentially pay for mom and dad's care. And what they don't realize, a lot of times someone will break a hip and then they'll go to a facility for rehab purposes. And over the course of a month or two, they won't get a bill. So they'll feel good. They'll be like, all right. And then during that rehab, they'll diagnose Alzheimer's or, dementia, Parkinson's. Some of those things come up and mom or dad worsens. And then in that situation, they're like, well, we don't think mom and dad should go home. And then you start getting the actual bills and you're confused because you're like, well, I thought Medicare paid. And people don't realize that Medicare only pays for roughly 100 days. And that's when you're getting better. It's a rehabilitative program. And then you're subject to then either pay out of pocket, which is what most people have to do. If you have long-term care insurance, you can turn it on. But I think most studies show, we've cited it a couple times, I don't know, Tim, 5%? Is that roughly?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, around 5% of the country has it, at least last time we checked. So not a lot of people can turn that on. So there's other tools I think that we're probably going to talk about today that can help people be in a better position to navigate, because this is like a dad moment where I talk to my daughter, right? Like a lot of times we do things that she doesn't want to do. And I always say the same thing. Lillian Thora Ayler, do you want to have options or no options? Do you want the situation to dictate what you do, or would you like to dictate what to do to the situation? And I think those are the important points that we have to consider when we're breaking down how to attack these nursing home situations. And we have some cool tools that you can kind of get ahead and add those options, Randy, but people have to ask the right questions and they have to address the fear. You have to attack it. You can't hide from these fears of retirement, which at $10,000 a month for, 5, 6, 7-year stays could be the biggest cost of your retirement.
Well, Greg hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's such an emotional issue, and Mr. Barnes has been through it with his father, and now he's realizing that he's got to do something for himself. And I think accepting that problem is step one. He knows it's a big deal, and the rules aren't kind. If he needs care, if his wife needs care, you got to spend down to $2,000. And like Greg said, you have to get ahead of these things. One of the ways that we deal with it is we put that roadmap for retirement together for people. And the tool that would be super helpful for Mr. Barnes, we call it a LTC plan. LTC, long-term care. You'll hear us mention that. And what that does is it shows him what his options are. As Greg said, only 5% of the population have long-term care insurance, but we have some neat tools that we use. We have to be 5 years ahead, but we use something we call an asset protection trust. And if Greg Barnes and his wife can get ahead of those situations and go ahead and start protecting assets now, if they need care in the future, they won't find themselves spending down like his dad did. And to me, that's step one.
Randy, I mean, the craziest part about this is I don't think people realize, did everybody hear the 2,000? At least in Ohio, right? That's all the money you can keep, right, Tim? I mean, walk people through that of how it works. I think people don't appreciate, well, if you have $1 million, $2 million, 500,000, you can only keep 2,000.
Right. And at $10,000 a month, it can go pretty quickly. So if you're the spouse that needs care, $2,000 is the max you're allowed to keep. If you're the healthy spouse, they let you keep the lesser of half of the financial accounts, or $150,000. So if you have $500,000, you don't get to keep $250,000. You just get to keep that $150,000.
So they go after the spouse's money and the money in your name. It doesn't matter if you move, because we've heard people just trying to move a bunch of money to their spouse's name. That doesn't work.
Yeah, if it were only that easy. I think they've seen all those tricks over the years. So got to get ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the asset protection trust to me is just getting money outside the system so that if you want to use it for a private room, home care, independent care, whatever the case may be, at least you have options. You can still go on to government benefits if you need to, but at least you have options is the whole idea.
Absolutely. And it's money that's there that the impoverished spouse can keep in addition to the maximum amount that the government lets them have. So just puts them in a better position if someone needs care down the line.
Makes sense.
And Greg, I can tell you one thing about own personal experience with dementia and Alzheimer's with my mom is your parents, if they're starting to, forget things and you go, what's going on there? And you start to get a little bit suspicious. There might be something happening. Our parents become great fakers when they have figured out how to make sure they can continue to drive and do everything that they can in the house by faking it. And then as soon as you take them out of their comfortable element, they have to go into the hospital because they break a hip, or you take them out of their home environment, then is when you really see it. And you say, holy cow, this is way worse than I thought it was. And then it becomes a crisis. And I know, Greg, people come to you and they say, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this is happening. I didn't even see it coming. And now it's a crisis. She can't live alone anymore. She has to go someplace. And now you're in a panic trying to find that place. You're comparing prices. You don't know where to go. I mean, it's good to have an advocate like you guys because you've been through this before.
Yeah, I mean, one of the unique parts of law practices is that they have specialties, right? Real estate, corporate, litigation. You fall and slip, someone that sues people. A lot of times people make the mistake of going to their general practitioner, the person they've known their whole life, that did their will maybe, or that, took care of their house when they bought it. This is a very unique area of law called elder law. And if people don't practice this, not like once a year, but like every week, it's hard to think that you'd be able to navigate the nuances of job and family services, veterans applications, Medicaid applications, how to navigate the rules. They're always changing, right, Tim? I mean, I think when we talk to people, you need an estate plan attorney and an elder care law attorney to navigate this. And that's why it's part of every roadmap is that you get to sit down with estate planning and elder care law attorneys that do this for a living. It's 100% of their focus because that's what most people need in retirement is to protect against the biggest risks.
Absolutely. And they need a personalized plan. I think that's really the key, because if you think AI is going to fix it, maybe, but hopefully not during my lifetime, right? We want to put plans together that work based on the assets, the family dynamics, where folks are in life. And we hope to catch them early, like Mr. Barnes. So we have that 5 years that we can reposition assets and put them in a much better place.
This is one of the main reasons that Golden Reserve is put together the way it is, so that we can handle these kind of instances for you. And if it makes you think, I'm going to need that kind of care as well, to have a strategy in place for you. We call it a roadmap for retirement. Everybody gets one. We have markets that we're going to talk about, taxes, fees, income, and of course, long-term care. Give us a call or give us a look on our website. It's pretty simple, getyourroadmap.com. We're talking about some estate planning issues today with Tim Stallings here. And when we talk about that widows and kiddos penalty that we regularly talk about here on the show, estate planning issues regularly go into tax planning issues. And that's the case here with Debbie.
Hi, this is Debbie from Plain City. I'm a widow with $400,000 in IRA money. I've heard you talk about how taxes go up when a spouse passes away. Can you explain why that is the case? I have 2 kids that I want to leave money to. Is there anything I can do with taxes to help them?
There she goes. That's perfect for our roadmap for retirement. Tim, tell us a little bit about what she's up against.
Wow. Debbie sounds like a really nice lady. She worked hard. She saved her money. She got $400,000 and she wants to leave it to her kids. So I'm glad she asked about the widow's penalty. Unfortunately, a lot of times people don't understand that Uncle Sam has a plan, but it's not set up for you. And with Debbie, if she's trying to leave money to her children, of course, while you're married, you're in joint tax brackets. But unfortunately, when one of those spouses dies, then you hear about that widow's penalty. And she's probably feeling that right now because it might cost her twice as much to take the same dollar out, because that money that her and her husband saved, it's still the same amount, but now she's paying at individual rates. And when it comes to leaving money to her kids, there's a second penalty, Randy. It's not just the widow's penalty. We also have the kiddos penalty. When her children receive that, it's called an inherited IRA. And when you have an inherited IRA, you don't get to take it over your lifetime. The average person who receives an inherited IRA is mid-50s, which could be their highest earning years. And when they take that money out, they're paying taxes at their working tax rates, not retirement rates. And they only have 10 years to empty out that inherited IRA. So that's where we see kids really frustrated, and we can fix it. The good news for someone like Debbie is we can put a plan in place for her. We call it our IRA tax plan. And we can look at that $400,000. We can look at her income, and then we can show her the right amount to take out, not the RMD. That's Uncle Sam's plan, right? He's set that trap for her, but we can avoid those traps by having an IRA tax plan in place. And that's something that I think would benefit her a lot.
We're going through some estate planning issues today, which is one of those places that has to be addressed. It's another way to protect your money. Let's sit down and talk through it. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. Well, along those same lines, somebody wrote into the Market Watch Advisor column with this. I'm 84 years old. I'm widowed. My daughter is the beneficiary of my IRA and the successor trustee for my revocable living trust. She's in a shaky marriage, and it could end soon in divorce. How could I prevent her soon-to-be ex-husband from claiming part of her inherited IRA and the assets in our trust? Pretty common problem. Greg, how would you talk to that one?
Oh, man. So the in-law issue is probably when, I practiced with Tim. When we built Ayler Stallings back in 2010, I promise most of our meetings felt more like family counseling sessions than they did the practice of law. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, people have lives, right? When that door closes, you understand their relationships with their kids, with their in-laws. grandkids, where they want their money to go. That's actually part of the juice here. It's not as easy as just like, here's a will, it goes to my kids equally. Like, that's usually not how families are set up or how they work. There's complications, there's dynamics, there's good spenders, there's bad spenders, there's in-law issues. And all of those things can be reflected to build a really successful delivery of assets when you're gone. I know a lot of people say, I don't care, I'm gone. That's not true. I know that's the knee-jerk baby boomer reaction, but you care. You want it to be successful. You want your money to mean something. You want it to help people, not hurt people. And inheritances done incorrectly can hurt people. They hurt more than they help. And they can really divide families. I mean, we've seen families separated over a piano that no one plays. We've seen families separated over things that don't matter because mom and dad didn't make any decisions. And they said, oh, my kids will figure it out. And what happens, the psychology here is you start to affiliate a lot of, emotion with stuff, because that's how during the bereavement process, you're attaching to anything that reminds you of mom and dad. And then everything becomes more, toxic and polarizing. And then you have, you start fighting with your siblings, and that's not what mom and dad would have wanted. And in this in-law situation, it's tricky. It's really tricky. And some of the different, strategies I'll let Tim dive into, because he deals with this a lot more than I do nowadays. But this is something that, hopefully at a big level, you start to think, not just do I want to go to my in-laws, but maybe we skip them. If I'm older and my kids are taken care of, maybe it goes to the grandkids, and we do things like that. So there's a lot of ways we can start to skin this cat, but there is strategy involved, and it's why it's involved in every roadmap, Randy.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this earlier, but this is what happens when the person that is advising her on the IRA and the attorney don't talk, because these things should work together. She already has a revocable trust, but she doesn't even know how to use it properly. And, if I was sitting down with a woman like this, we would talk about the need for a comprehensive plan, because we want to leverage the tools she had. I remember the article that you wrote 15 years ago, and the acronym you used was ABCD: protect your assets and your beneficiaries from creditors and divorce. It's so easy to remember, but if she just leaves things outright to her daughter, then her daughter, could lose them to a divorce, or could, maybe reconcile and down the road lose it. But it sounds like she wants the stuff to stay in her bloodline, and taking advantage of using the trust as a beneficiary of the IRA might be a discussion that we have. Setting her daughter up for success, I think, is huge. And, using the trust properly, she's got the tools. She just needs the guidance on how to use them.
And Randy, one of the things that we would advise is be careful of, we wrote our show, if you look behind me, Fire Your Financial Advisor, right? So be careful of financial advisors, but be careful of attorneys, because they will over lawyer whenever they get the chance, and they'll make plans that are so complicated and so expensive to administer that they have no real hope of ever working to your intention. So sometimes we need a practical big brother or big sister advice here from our retirement planners, or in conjunction with our attorneys in the room, that say, listen, we're transferring a certain amount of assets. We're going to have to live with some risk here, because the cost of putting a corporate trustee, the cost of doing a generation skipping trust, the cost of administering a grandkid trust could end up eating up more than 20 or 30% of your overall trust value. We don't think that's what you want here. I think at times people need to understand their options, and then they can make the decision on what's most important to them when they're building their estate plan. And that's the approach we take, is hopefully practical advice with practical plans that aren't over lawyered.
Well, Tim, one of the pieces of advice that this particular advisor gave in the Market Watch Advisor column was just be careful as to what account that money goes into. If that money came from mom and went into the daughter's account that was in her name, then it's safe. But if it went into a joint checking account, now he has access to it too in the case of a divorce or inheritance. Is he on the right track there?
Yeah, I mean, look, inheritance in most states is treated as separate property, but we all know that if you leave something to your child who's in a difficult relationship, they might get leveraged where, hey, why did your mom do this? Put the money in our name. You don't trust me. You can imagine how these conversations go, Randy.
Sure.
Well, I think, Randy, one of the most common ways that doesn't work is when the spouse says, well, we didn't use that inherited because we were going to use that together for our retirement, so we used my accounts. And that's how they end up breaking into the spouse's accounts we're not family law attorneys here, so I don't want to sit here and represent, but I know with friends And people have talked to us. That's a way they get around a lot of times. I separate it in my spouse's account, but we used a different spouse's money for living expenses, et cetera. So it's very, very complicated. We'd be very careful just relying on that alone.
Gotcha. Well, this is why you need an estate planning attorney, and this is why it's a part of our roadmap for retirement. Give us a look at our website, getyourroadmap.com. Very simple. All right. I have a piece of audio here from somebody who is really struggling, guys. And this is Terry, and she's in Chicago, and she's getting close to retirement, but she's not quite there, and she is just tired of that 2-hour commute every single day. And she is just frustrated. Here she is.
I'm just tired. I'm just stinking tired. And there are days when I just wonder, how much more can I do? I mean, I'm not retirement age yet, so still got to crank it out. But man, there are days when I just go, can I do it now? Can I just call it a day? I don't know.
I feel you, girl. I feel you. I think a lot of people come into your office saying exactly the same thing. So, Greg, Terry might not feel like she's ready for retirement, but maybe financially she is. And those are one of those meetings where, hey, you know what? If you wanted to retire early, maybe we could pull this off. Or could you go another year? Maybe we could get it going. Talk to me about that person who comes in that's just at the end of their rope, but maybe they're not quite there financially yet.
Randy, when you said I feel you, that's not the same days we record, right? That's not the days that we're working together. I want to make sure that I'm clear here. That Randy
You're clear
loves,
there. You're clear.
Loves working with Greg. So when we talk to folks, am I ready? It's a hard decision, Tim, right? People are trying to do, a lot of different things. They read the articles, they hear the TV shows, they hear the radio shows, and they work themselves into a frenzy because everyone's talking about running out of money. So that usually delays people's retirement plans. And my advice to Terry is to take a piece of paper and write down all the expenses you have every month. And then you write down the income you have. And then you write down your savings. And you start to make this a math problem versus an emotional problem. That is step one here, because the industry does such a great job of scaring us to make them feel. I feel like the financial industry wants you to be afraid, because that's the only way they can convince you to charge 1%. Really is really like, I got to be really, really smart to take care of all these things. And I want you at max fear when you come through my doors. And that's not a very fair place, because it's also a huge challenge for firms like ours, because we can't get people to spend their money. That's actually one of the hardest parts of our job, is to show people they're safe, to show that, hey, you've made it. You're there, enjoy it, go on the trips, make the dream purchases, have all that fun. And for Terry, one of the things that we've created over the years is the income forecast. And what it does is it shows people exactly what they spent last year. And then we project it out 25 years based on some, assumptions of conservative 5% growth. Some inflation, cost of living, some healthcare, some traveling, blah, blah, blah. And we keep doing it every year. And the reason I did this is because Randy made me, basically, is why I did it. That's the short end of the story, is Randy forced me to say, you got to talk about income on the show, Greg. I'm tired of bringing it up and you ignoring it. But the real reason 5 years ago we built this tool was it actually turned into something very cool, where it was our tool to convince people to spend more money. And that felt very different for clients. Clients never had their planners be like, hey, here's how much money you made. And oh, by the way, your account gets bigger. And they're like, what? Yeah, if you spend the same amount you did last year, your account gets bigger, just growing at 5% a year. And they're like, what? And then over the years, they'd spend more money. They'd enjoy their life a little bit more. And that was the goal all along, Randy, is to get people empowered to say, this is your retirement. Let's build some memories versus just thinking about dividends all the time. No one's going to be on their deathbed and be like, I got some great dividends. That's not how people think. It's like, gosh, I remember that trip we took together to Hawaii, or remember that weird out west road trip we took with the grandkids. Like, those are the things that people hang on to, later in life. And we all know that spending in retirement is like a, smiley face, Tim. It's not linear, and most plans are built on linear spending, which is just a lie. That's not how people live in retirement. They spend less the older they get. It's just fact. And because of that, the assumptions are so high, people have to take more risk or they do less stuff because of the traditional financial industry lies. And that's our mission. That's why we're here. We're put on this planet to annoy financial advisors and hopefully get people to spend more of their retirement dollars, Randy. That's why I am here on this planet to annoy every financial advisor in, America, and to hopefully start getting start getting retirees to start taking more trips, to start doing more things with their family, because that's what it's all about. And hopefully it starts here, having conversations like this.
Tim, you've been in those meetings and meeting with people, and I know that there's some intrepidation when people probably walk through the door. I didn't do this right. I didn't save enough. I don't know if I can do this. And then the math works out, and suddenly you say, you know what? You can retire if you want to. What have you seen literal tears, emotion, and things like that at those kind of meetings?
Yeah, it's awesome because we're telling Terry where she's going, not kind of where she is or where she's been. I want to know what she wants to retire to. Clearly, she hates her 2-hour commute, and I don't even know if she lives in Chicago because 2 hours is pretty far for a commute. But I want to know what Terry's going to do when we show her that she has enough money to retire. Like, that's exciting to me. When someone says, hey, Tim, you helped make my dreams come true. Like, that's awesome to help them take the trip they always wanted. We had a woman, and I've talked about on the show before, but she taught music in school, and she had never played a big recital. And one of the things that we were able to do for her is we were able to rent an auditorium, a nice one, and she had a makeover done, and she got to play. And it was like standing room only. There was like 400 people there, and it wasn't a huge expense. It was like $5,000, right? Like, it was significant, but this is like an experience she'll carry with her the rest of her life. And when we first met, I asked her what retirement looked like, and she would say, well, whatever my husband, wants. Like, she wasn't specific, and we got her specific. And like, to me, that's so much more fun to talk about than the dividends, as Greg says.
Yeah. You're listening to Fire Your Financial Advisor with Greg Ayler and Tim Stallings at Golden Reserve. We're talking through some of the issues of retirement, and one of them might be you are at the end of your rope. You can't stand one more day, and you want to find out if you can retire. How are we going to know unless we do the math on your retirement? Let's make it a math problem. Let's figure it out together. Give us a look on our website, which is getyourroadmap.com. Only about 15, 20, maybe 25% of people use a financial advisor. So that means there's a lot of people out there that don't. Why don't they? Why aren't we all getting help with our retirement money? Well, here's a list that came out, and it said, first of all, I can't find somebody I can trust. Next one, I think it's going to cost me too much. Next one, I think I can do this myself. I don't want to give up control of my money. Number 5, had a bad experience with one in the past. And the last one, fear of judgment. I've screwed up. I know he's going to tell me about it, and I don't want to face it. Greg, there's a pretty good list here. I don't want to walk in a door, and feel judged of my past and the ways I've screwed up. What do you think of this list here? And there's a lot of other good reasons not to use a financial advisor. What do you say?
I think it's fair. Right. At the end of the day, these are very fair things that we've all heard. People put off things that make them uncomfortable. They don't do things that put them in precarious positions if they feel like they haven't saved enough. Most people, their neighbors, everybody lies. So everybody thinks that they have more money than they do. And they've been hearing all this. So then maybe they're a little embarrassed, or, probably more often than not, we get the DIYer, the person that's like, I've been crushing it. I've been averaging 9% returns for the last 10 years. So, the investment centric hat that people put on probably keeps them away from financial advisors, because that's all financial advisors talk about, right? And when you talk about investments all the time, it's not a wonder that people feel like they can replace it by doing it themselves with the, surge of index funds and ETFs and all those things. And they don't understand the complexity of all these other things. So there's two routes I want to take here. One is a lot of times people undervalue all of the ancillary connected pieces of a retirement plan, Tim. Like the legal and the tax, for example. Are they fully vetted and legal? Are they just Googling around on what they should do, and now they're just guessing? Same with tax. I a lot of times am Googling around trying to figure out, hey, what should I, what should I put my money in? And I bet you would get 400 different answers every time. So how do you have someone that actually profiles your life, breaks it down, and goes through the process? That's the value. The value isn't the investment selection. It's the analysis of getting you to your goals. I mean, that's the whole process that you're paying for. No different than an attorney. You're not paying for a will. You're paying for someone to advise if you need a will or a trust. You're not paying for investments. You're essentially having someone advise which investment blends are the right for you. So when you're breaking this down, you're paying for that expertise. You're paying for new stuff. Who's on the cutting edge of all these things that knows what's going on with a lot of experience? That leads me to the other one. You're paying for someone that has experience, that have driven estate plans and retirement plans and investment plans from start to finish. So they get all of those processes. You're paying for someone to take care of your spouse if they're not involved and something happens to you. A lot of times people forget about that. Do you want your spouse to be starting from square zero? That's a huge loss. And I also think there's those are practical, right? Those are practical, realistic, value-driven reasons why you should have a professional. By the way, let's just put this in context. You've worked 30 years. It's your most expensive asset. Is this where you're like, I'm going to figure out how to do my own drywall? Like, no, this is your dream house. Like, why are you trying to figure out the most expensive risk and the most financially important decision in your life? You're like, nah, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to pick my own stocks. Like, it just doesn't, to me, it's never really made sense. It seems like a silly approach from a value standpoint, but from even a practical standpoint, don't you want to do other stuff? Like some people, like you hear a lot of articles about mowing your yard. Like some people like mowing their yard. Weirdos. Of course, if you can afford it, you'd have someone mow your yard. There's a time pendulum that you only have so many minutes in the day. If there's things that you don't like to do or you don't want to do or that you can have someone else do effectively and efficiently, you should probably have them do it to free more time for your friends and your family and all the fun, good stuff of life. That's another reason to reconsider, maybe I need a second opinion. Now, the roadmap for us was built from an attorney perspective to mitigate risk. I mean, we talked about the 4 largest risks of retirement: fees, taxes, market risk, long-term care. We talked about the income conundrum. And we said, you know what, if we show people where they're at, hopefully they'll see, man, there's some gaps here. And they'll make the right decisions. And it may not be with us, which is great. At the end of the day, we're good people. We want you guys to win. So if you don't use us, that's fine. But hopefully the roadmap by itself will at least show you the gaps of where you're at from where we perceive as the largest risk in retirement. And then you do something about it. Whether it be with us or someone else is fine. But at the end of the day, at least let us put a spotlight on where we think people make the biggest mistakes that can hurt you the most. And from there, it's up to you to make good decisions.
And Tim, one of the things that is probably number one on everybody's list is, how much is this going to cost me? And I think you should bring out one of the things we do every single show is show how Golden Reserve is different. That model that the financial advisory world has for you is how much you have determines how much you pay. At Golden Reserve, we have a whole different look at that. Go through that for me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in listening to Greg, transparency and communication are something that are just embedded in the roadmap naturally, because one, we find out what they want retirement to look like. And this isn't a transaction, pick these stocks and you're good. There's other things that we can probably more dramatically impact their retirement with. Obviously, I'm here as the attorney talking about the legal stuff, but also keeping their fees down, transparent fees. People like to know what they're paying, because how can they know what the value is if they don't even know what they're paying? So we show them what they're paying if they're working with a current advisor. We show them what they would pay if they work with us. And the nice thing about our fees are, one, they're transparent, and two, they're flat. Meaning if the market does great, fantastic. We're all excited, but it didn't create twice as much work for us, because in the last decade, the market grew 150%, right? So we think the fees should be transparent and in line with the services that we're providing. That's what makes us very unique. I think 95% of advisors charge a percentage, and they have clever statements. We make more when you make more. But what they don't say is what they're actually doing, to justify that increase in the fee.
We also do pretty good if you do like crappy.
So I think, Randy, to your question, I think, getting those fees in particular transparent, showing them what their risk is, making sure they have that legal plan Those are all just parts of that roadmap. And why not? It's complementary. Why not at least be informed and know where you are so you can make a good decision?
I mean, Randy, that's the big issue, right? Like the two fees that people pay in our world are advisor fees and investment fees. And very seldomly, if ever, have we been in a meeting where someone knows the dollar amount they pay each year in both. And part of it's the way the industry is set up. They're set up to hide them. I'll just be honest, they're hiding them. The industry is netting them off your gains or adding them to your losses, and you have to have like software or your prospectus to figure out your expense ratios. It's not on your statements. Your investment fees are not on your statements most of the time. So we do the work for you. We have the software. We do it at no cost. If you bring a statement in, your financial advisor will never know. We'll show you what you're paying your advisor and what you're paying for your investments, because that to me then allows you to assess, is it worth it? Am I getting the value for what I'm paying? You know what you pay to have your driveway shoveled. You should know what you're paying for your financial investments, Randy.
Well, the name of the show is Fire Your Financial Advisor. And the reason that we have that title is we want to shine a light on what you're getting into when it comes to working and finding somebody to help you with retirement. And a lot of times this system works better for them than it does for you. And that's why Greg and Tim have set this up at Golden Reserve with a different kind of fee system, a flat fee. You know what you pay, and here's our website, getyourroadmap.com. Pretty simple. When you think about your retirement and the funds, you look at your iPad and you figure out what you're doing. What's my Vanguard account doing? What's my Fidelity account doing? How am I doing on that 401k? Well, we've been doing pretty well over the last couple of years. I went back 10 years to the July of 2015. The Dow was at 17,600. Today, 10 years later, we're at 44,000. That is a 100% increase in 10 years. So that little graph that you see at Vanguard is going up like a hockey stick. So I want to know, Greg, as people come into your office to do this kind of planning, do they believe that that's going to continue just like that for the next 10 years? Or are they thinking, I don't know, I'm worried about this? Or what's their expectation of what the market's going to do and how much is going to help their retirement?
You ever been to Vegas?
Yes, I have.
I think people walk in there expecting to lose.
No, they don't. I'm going to take the Bellagio for everything they've got.
Yep. No, unfortunately, we have real short memories when it comes to losses, and we've always made money. So it puts the system under a precarious position where, if you mentioned, the Dow's done about 150% return, which is roughly, let's say 11% ish each year annualized. So that's like a pretty juicy return. And as far as the S&P did even better, I want to say I looked it up. It looked like it did about 235% return over that same period, which is roughly about 12.3% return every year. That's just sexy. That is a sexy return. That's a double-digit return. Over the life of the the stock market, I think you hear studies all the time saying it's an 8% annualized return over time, and I think people start to expect that. And what they don't realize is the sequence of returns nuance of it just depends on when you hop on the roller coaster, and not everybody gets the same ride. And I hear you, right? It's fun to make money. Right? Tim, do you like making money?
I love it.
Do you like, Randy, you like having 10% returns?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely.
Right, so I'm not talking everybody out of how they feel, right? Of course, I want butterscotch and
caramel
on my ice cream. Like, what am I, a communist? Of course I want that. But the reality is that we have to be responsible. We can't speed all the time, right? Like, hey, I got there really fast. That was fun. It was fun to drive really fast. I didn't get a speeding ticket. You're like, man, that shaved like 5 minutes off the drive. That was fun. But it's not always fun. And I think that is where our job is, to be at least the voice of reason, to say, listen, there's a chance that, the market could go down 10, 20, 30, 40%. And if it does that, we both agree that would substantially compromise your retirement. Like that we know that there would be things that you'd have to give up that you wanted to do if you lose 40%. Because there's also a chance that if you lost 40% and I say, would you let me keep your money in the market? You'd say, no, I'd make you take it out. So that means we're probably going to end up losing a lot of the upswing in retirement because you're going to panic when you see, $1 million go down to 600,000. And I'm going to say, you want to wait it out?
Right.
You're going to say, take it out, take it out. And when we take it out, we lose a lot of the boomerang. So that's just human nature. And we've seen it over the course of 2000, 2009, and 10. No matter what people say, until they're in that position, it's really hard to know how you're going to act. So I guess here, you've heard me say on the show 1,000 times, and Tim, we talk about it all the time. We think that the financial industry has done a great job screwing up how everyone looks at their money. They benchmark indexes. Randy just did it. He contributed. Thanks a lot, Randy. Thanks a lot. Making my job harder on my own radio show. When you start benchmarking things like the Dow or the S&P, I think that's always strange because it's like, oh, your life mirrors the Dow return? Like, oh, so your Applebee's, your Lotta Coladas, and your Blooming Onions, they're based on the indexes? Well, no. What about your trip to your pickleball that you play at the park? No. Trip to Florida? No. So why are we benchmarking our investment choices, chasing arbitrary returns that we don't need, and taking risks that we shouldn't be taking on, all in the hope to beat an index that means nothing to us? It literally means nothing to us. So if we can just actually create a new race, the retirement race that we try to do here at Golden Reserve, that says, hey, we want to make money, of course, but we're not going to ever compromise you doing everything you want to do in retirement. That's just the deal, right? Why would I try to get you an extra 2 or 3% where there's a risk that you could lose 30 or 40%? When I know that extra 3 or 4% isn't going to do anything towards you doing everything you want in retirement, Tim. I mean, that is the secret sauce of retirement, is making it more predictable and reliable so that you know you can do everything you want, and then you win. You don't win because you get returns. You win because you do everything you want. Isn't that I'm just so confused that people don't attack finances like this, but maybe it's just a Golden Reserve thing. I don't know, Tim.
No, I think it's, if Greg Ayler is up $5,000 at the casino, he says to his wife, hey, I'm going to give you $2,000. Let's take that off the table so I can gamble the rest. Right. But candidly, I mean, retirement should kind of look similarly, right? Because when you're 40, you have time on your side. But the closer you get to retirement or in retirement, like, you can't take that 2008. So we have to build the plan knowing that the storm's coming, but we don't want to have to change the plan in the middle of the storm. And that's why we look at risk when we sit down with everyone. So we know that risk is important, Greg. So we use our market risk report. How could you decide if I have too much risk if you just don't know what you have? So that's where we start. We have the software. We can see exactly what people have in their portfolio, and then we can show them, if timing is bad for you, this is how your life savings would be affected. And when people see what would happen in 2008, it's easier to explain to them that the market is still a tool. We're still going to use it, but let's use it the way retarees should. In dollars, not percentages too, Randy. That's a big nuance that people don't do. How does losing $417,000 versus 13%? It's different. You want to hear it in dollars of what you would lose. Most definitely.
This is one of the areas that we all want to know. I know I need to use that market somehow, but how much? How much do I want to dip my toe in that? You want to do a cannonball in, or you just want to have a little bit in the market? Let's figure it out together. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. You've probably heard this many, many times. Whatever you bring home now, figure 80% of that, and that'll probably be just fine for you in retirement. Well, J.P. Morgan broke that down a little bit further. If you make between $80,000 and $150,000 a year, that 80% number is pretty good. If you make more than that, maybe you can have less, maybe 72%. But this one really jumped out at me. For those people who make $50,000 a year, they're going to need to have 94% of that take-home paycheck in order to do well in their retirement years. So, Greg, are you somebody who subscribes to the income percentage, or how do you guys figure it out at Golden Reserve?
What do you think, Randy?
I think you do it differently. I'm just setting you up. That's the ball on the team. You now hit it out of the park, and I
Ready, set, go. No, this doesn't make any sense. It's never made sense. It's not how people live retirement. It's just another financial lie built to the industry to ideally have you work longer, which helps the 401k companies and the custodians make more money, or it helps the financial advisors convince you that you need to take on more risk and you need them to invest your money in riskier stuff so they can charge more. So I don't believe in that stuff. I think it should be a number. As always, people don't live their retirement usually based off a percentage of their previous earning years. Believe it or not, it all kind of comes together very, I guess, shockingly similar on how people that have $500,000 to about $2.5 million of investables, how they live their retirement. So if you say to yourself, I need to spend $80,000 to do everything I want to do in retirement, perfect. Let's do that. It doesn't matter what your income was while you were working. That's the delta. Or, hey, I need 100,000. We rarely see people spending, $100,000, $120,000 every year. They may do some fun things a year where they spike it, but consistently speaking, most people aren't spending that kind of money. So you factor in your Social Security, let's say it's 50 or 60 grand, then you back your way into what else is needed. When you start thinking about retirement like that, the other ironic, nuance on how the financial industry talks about this is they never expect you to spend any of your principal. They're like, well, you only made 3% this year, so you can only spend 3%. You're like, I have $2 million. What are you talking about? No, I can actually spend some of my principal. It's okay. That's why we have piggy banks as kids, right? We break them so that we could buy BB guns and bicycles and dolls. If Tim was a big doll guy. I mean, these are the things that you have to do to enjoy retirement. So I could never understand this fear of you can only spend the interest you make on your principal, because that just leads to more not doing what we talked about, which is building dreams and building memories. It ends up being just more a math game of just dividends and returns that end up going nowhere. And I think you'll see, we cite these statistics all the time, and I'm going to try to take it easy on compliance and not try to go through too many of the numbers. But at the end of the day, we know what people spend is, let's call it $70,000 to $100,000 from our perspective here at Golden Reserve. That's most of the spending we see from a retired perspective. So if you can back your way into those numbers after getting rid of the Social Security, I mean, think about it. If you have $1 million getting 5% in like a money market, and you have 50 or 60,000 in Social Security, you're home. You're not even. So why are we doing all this extra hoopla and jumping around trying to get to a certain level of income production, which I think a lot of times just gets people in trouble?
JP Morgan's just given us a rule of thumb. Thanks, guys. That's not very helpful, right? Yeah. Because these are all individual decisions, right? Some people do spend $100,000 at the top end of the range you just gave, and other people have, things they like to do that aren't very expensive, right? Maybe they mow their own grass, right? We figured that out earlier.
Weirdos.
But, obviously they have these individual differences, and context matters. And I think, that's where understanding it needs to be their plan. It shouldn't be what JP Morgan says that 77% of the population do, right? It should be, what do Mr. and Mrs. Smith need? What's their retirement look like? Let's make it amazing. Can we do it? Do we have the money? And if we do, off we go, right? And the whole 4% rule, you'll never spend your principal, that always was silly to me, right?
Well, I mean, the income forecast was built for this reason. We built it to show people what they actually spent and what their money would look like in 25 years. And the reason we update it every year, we think it's important to show people that a lot of times their money's growing, which means that if they're putting off things, stop putting them off and go have some fun. Our investment strategy should be the boring part of retirement, and your life should be the exciting part. Hopefully the roadmap brings that to life for anyone listening.
Well, let's do your retirement math, not the retirement math that's in Market Watch or all these other places that you might look online. Let's do your retirement math, and let's do it today with our friends over at Golden Reserve. Give us a look on our website, getyourroadmap.com. That is all the time we have today on Fire Your Financial Advisor. We hope you'll join us next week. Check out the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.